Welcome to Brands We Love, a podcast produced by Mula Media, where we discuss Kenya's favorite household brands. And today we are going to be discussing a brand that has been in our offices, in our schools, and that would be the BIC pen. My name is Lydia Nyawera, and my co-host will introduce themselves.
My name is Ivy Malloy.
My name is Susan Nyawera.
And my name is John Girashu.
That's great. So what we're going to do is just have a little bit of a discussion about BIC pens. BIC have been in our homes, in our schools, in our workplaces for decades. And today we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation about where does this brand come from, what's the history of this particular item, which is a pen, and more so whether this is still a brand that we love, because that's what we discuss on Brands We Love. Now, for me, I didn't get to do much in terms of writing with ballpoint pens because we were not allowed to use ballpoint pens in primary school. You had to wait until you were around in standard 8. That would be just before you sat for your national examinations. That's when then you got permission to do that. So most of us were trained how to write mostly with pencils. Nursery school, learning your ABCs, we learned using pencils because they were easier to erase. So when you made a mistake, you were able to correct it. And many students right now, I know they probably don't realize this, but we had a very difficult time using a pen in primary school because many teachers were not keen on young students learning how to write using a ballpoint pen. And I'm glad that I finally got to experience a pen, but unfortunately for most of us growing up, it was not a staple. So it was kind of a privilege for you to be able to write using a ballpoint pen. I don't know, Ivy, what was your experience with the ballpoint pens?
For me, I started using the ballpoint pen in class 2. I remember I was the third person in our class to use it. Very proud moment for me there. So you're only allowed to use the ballpoint pen if you have a good handwriting. So if you get to class 4 and you still don't have a good handwriting, then you're still going to be using a pencil. But we used pencils for in-shine composition, then the ballpoint pen for everything else. Oh, and mathematics. Yes.
Cool. Susan, what's your ballpoint pen story?
In primary school, everyone starts writing with a pencil, but you get to switch to pens when you get to class 4. Because this is when your handwriting it has developed. In the primary school I went to, you are not allowed to use ballpoint pens, and it was a punishable offense. So I used the fountain pen where we used to use ink, but you'd still find people using ballpoint pens in hiding. But if the teacher discovers that you didn't use a fountain pen, you used to be punished. I started using ballpoint pens, commonly referred to as biros, legally in Form 1, if I can use
So you
legally.
are a criminal.
Yes. Yeah. So that's my pen story.
All right. Girasho, what was your interaction with pens?
Yeah, so like I think like you and Susan, I was using pencils up to around standard 4. And then we were very excited at the end of standard 3 because we'll start using fountain pens the following year. But something that struck me when you started using fountain pens is how messy they were. So the class 4 desks, the standard 4 desks had a lot of blue on them. And so we used fountain pens for a while. But I remember now, I think towards standard 8, by that time we were using ballpoint pens. We would have biros, ballpoint pens. And I recently found this one. It's a BIC pen, but it looks like a variety of pen we used to have then, which would have different colors popping out. If you want green, this is green. If you want black, if you want red, if you want blue, yeah. So I found this recently at the supermarket, and I was very happy that I even bought one for myself. But also thinking of pens generally, I think I have two experiences. One is remembering there was an interview for Chief Justice candidates. And what struck people on social media was the simplicity of one. He's a wealthy man. He's represented big clients. But he went for his interview with a big crystal, blue one. And it's for that, people online were saying that shows the humility of that person or the simplicity of that person. The other one was that some time back, we met a client who gave one of my colleagues a pen, a fountain pen. And we don't use fountain pens now. But he gave him a fountain pen that we later found out was quite expensive. I think worth 150,000 shillings. And even the buying of ink for that pen was also quite a process. You have to find the best ink. But I have not seen that person use that pen since that day. Yeah, which goes to speak, I think, again to why BIC and particularly the pens are so ubiquitous in our lives now, which I think we'll discuss a bit later in the episode.
I think so. And I'm glad each of us have interacted with pens one way or another, but there is a specific brand that has been part of our lives as Kenyans, and that would be the BIC brand. Now, it's gotten to the point where we even, when we are borrowing a pen, we usually say, do you have a BIC? Like, do you have a biro? So even the name itself is synonymous with ballpoint pens. But the history of BIC dates back to 1944 in the suburbs of Paris, when Marcel BIC started manufacturing the spare parts for pens. And he was trying to perfect the ballpoint pen because it already existed by this point, but he felt that there was still something more he could do with it. And that is why he decided to go the extra mile and develop something that was, one, made of plastic so that it would be durable and affordable, because at the time most of the ballpoint pens were very bulky because they were made out of metal. And in his quest for perfection, that's when he came up with the ballpoint pen, which had the what we now have, the little plastic on the inside, and the fact that it would last longer and the ink was not running back up. And the technology that he developed helped him to now manufacture pens faster and make them a mass product that could easily be sold at an affordable price for ordinary French people and eventually the rest of Europe. For Kenyans, I believe that I think pens have been around. I think the BIC itself has been around since, I think, around 75 years. But for the pen itself, it was developed in 1944. So it's surprising that people thought it was a Kenyan brand, but actually it originated in France. Now, overview of the organization, it's a huge organization that has been in place for a very long time, but it's a family-owned business, and it has over 13,000 employees. That's a huge workforce. These are people who have been in the organization and are stationed across 5 continents. And with 23 manufacturing factories across the globe, this brand, BIC, is in 160 countries, and currently they are producing 27 million products. It's also important to note that because BIC does not just produce pens, they have also diversified to other small products such as shavers and markers and lighters. So the BIC brand is not just synonymous with pens around the world. It's also got other brands other small items that are sold in day-to-day life, in your kitchen, in your interactions with stationery. So they have expanded their portfolio. And just as the BIC family has continued to grow, they have maintained control of the BIC organization, with still having 48% control stake in the company. However, it is still publicly traded, so that means about 63% of voting rights are theirs, while 51% belong to are available for you to buy. So if you want a piece of BIC, I guess you can own that. That's if you're in France. But it's good to know that BIC remains a brand that has stood the test of time, despite the fact they are manufacturing something that is available to so many of us and has very many facets of interest in terms of education and work, and its use has continued to stay despite the revolution of the digital era. Now, even as we discuss the interesting bits of BIC, I don't know if we could just delve a little bit deeper into the use of the fountain pen, because you've mentioned, Ngirashu just mentioned something about the use of fountain pen.
Yeah.
And I realized that even for us, we were taught how to write using fast pencils, and then we graduated to fountain pens. And I didn't realize it, but BIC do not even have those kind of fountain pens. So there was other brands that were introduced to us earlier than BIC, but BIC is the one that has stuck around. I don't know if any of you had the issue of the messy use of fountain pens. I think you mentioned something about that, Susan.
Yes, the Sorry, the fountain pens were actually very messy. In primary school, I was in a school that we wore a white shirt, grey sweater, then the skirt was also grey and white. It had grey and white boxes and red. So the blue pen, when we were learning how to use them, it really used to mess up your skirt if you don't know how to, if like you tip over and the ink bottle spills on your skirt. So I've already mentioned that using ballpoint pens was illegal. So you definitely didn't have a choice. You're the person who used to wash your clothes was
Had a
suffering,
hard
but
time.
yeah, because it never used to come off like in the first wash. Maybe, okay, I don't know if it was washed badly, but it really used to stick. And so biros or ballpoint pens offered a solution, but you are not allowed to use them. So you just had to learn how to use it.
Has anyone ever experienced a situation where your ballpoint pen actually boiled over? I want
Yeah,
to get into the
yeah.
technology a
I
bit.
think we had quite a lot of that. And you'll have, typically you put
On your pocket,
in your
yeah.
shirt pocket, and then it boils. I don't know. I don't know why or how our pens would boil so much when we were younger. But as we grew up, I think it was something about the way you carry it, or the way you keep it. I don't know why at that point we were carrying it in our shirts the whole time. You could just put it in your bag, since you're not going to write over lunch hour. But there was that. And once it stains your shirt, I think that thick ink in the ballpoint pen, which is one of the reasons it became popular, would also become very sticky and
difficult to
difficult to remove
clean,
on the shirt. Yeah, so that's true. But why don't you tell us about the history of pens? What did you find out?
I was thinking about it because I realized that even as we discuss the brand, we also need to look at the device itself, which is a pen.
Yeah.
And pens actually have been with us for centuries. It turns out that the first pen was actually a reed stylus. That means it was made out of reeds. And it was actually developed in Egypt. So it's an African invention. Back in 3200 BC. This was before Christ. So that's how old pens are. And this was used by the Egyptians, and it was eventually picked up by other civilizations. And then it was developed, and the Europeans decided to come up with something called a quill. This was now a feather that could be dipped into the ink. And that was back in 600 AD. So Christ had come and left us by then. So yes, after the reed pens came the quills, and the quills were very popular in the European markets because that is what they used, and they were readily available. But for decades, this was what was accepted as the preferred mode of writing, even on papyrus and any other medium. And then later on, we have the steel point pen. That is, sorry about that, 1828. That's how old that small little ball is. 1828. Can you imagine? That was when now that pen was developed. And it was developed by a guy called John Mitchell. And he developed a mass way to produce nibs that would then just let the ink go through, instead of dipping it into the ink, he had a mechanism where you would touch the ink and then the nib would be used to then write. And it was made out of steel, so it was more durable than the feathers.
So at that point, the writing is, you're typically writing you dip it and then you write.
Yes, that was technically the way it was created. Then in 1827, just a few years later, came the fountain pen, which is what now we were taught how to write with.
So what's the difference between a fountain and the steel?
So the steel, you had to dip it, right? And then use it because it had the metal, the metal nib, yeah. But the fountain had this device where you could put it in the ink and collect some ink. Yeah. So you have a reservoir, a small reservoir of ink. That would be now the fountain pen.
So it's like a fountain, like the water fountain. It has a reservoir and then you touch it.
Yes. So fountain pens had a reservoir of ink. Unlike the steel ballpoint, which was you dip it, then you use it. You dip it, then you use it. So this again was also mass produced. Yeah. And it was also durable because it has the steel and then it has the reservoir of ink, which was good because that meant that you could write with it for longer. And then comes the invention of the ballpoint pen, which was in 1888. And I know this is a bit, it seems like it's a long time ago, but surprisingly, the development from the steel point to the fountain to the ballpoint is very short. It's less than 100 years. It's actually about 80 years. So you see, the development and interest in developing a better device has always been there, long before BIC came along. And the ballpoint pen comes in the 20th century. And the difference was that while the person who invented it, which I know, Susan, you're going to mention shortly, the person who invented it came up with a design that allowed for you to glide through. Your writing was easier. You still had the reservoir, you still have the steel tip, but unlike the nibs, which were in the fountain pens, this one could roll because it's a small ball inside the pen. And the interesting thing is that with this kind of device, it meant that you were able to hold, one, more ink, and two, you'd write longer and it was less messy. And it's surprising that the name biro, as I came to find out, does not necessarily mean ballpoint pen. It was just a name that came up with a guy called Laszlo. But Susan's going to mention a little bit about that.
And I think biro is a term I thought is very Kenyan.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to find out that it actually, maybe in other countries they also refer to, I don't know if, I've not been to many countries, but I've never heard it being called biro in another country.
So in Brazil, it still is referred to as bairom.
Biro.
Bairom,
Oh.
because that's the name that it went with there. Because after it's in the ballpoint pen technology is invented by, I think, John Loud, an American. Biro and his brother are the ones who actually eventually get the patent for it. Laszlo Biro was a Hungarian journalist. I think you'll be happy to know.
Yes, I'm glad he was a journalist.
He was a journalist. They're the ones who patented now the system of the ballpoint pen, using the round metal at the bottom, and the reservoir, and the thicker ink. Because the ink used in fountain pens is called Indian ink, and it's very viscous. It's like water.
Hence why it was always messy
So
on the desk. It's all over the place. Yeah.
Yes, and that's why even with us, we are finding it even now. It's still messy to use.
Yeah.
So the one now used in the ballpoint pens, it's more viscous. I think the reservoir holds it, and the mechanism holds it in such a way that it can glide onto the paper. It doesn't drip. It doesn't blot. But for us, it will still boil.
Yeah, so having had the experience of the fountain pen in primary school, it's interesting to learn that, considering the fountain pens were developed before the biros or the ballpoint pens, that the people who developed them, who is Parker and Petrash Poinaru, they experimented with the concept of the self-feeding pen, of which this is the fountain pen, but they also struggled with the constant ink spills, smudging, and the need for frequent refills. So if, for example, myself, if I can put myself in their shoes, you'd find yourself writing notes maybe in the middle of social studies, and then it was you had to write a lot of notes. Then you need to fill up your pen and your teacher doesn't care, and you might even get punished for starting to tell the teacher to go back. I don't know why teachers are like that. They don't get... Sorry? Yes, or borrowing ink. Like, ink was such a... The people who are mean with their ink, I don't know where they are in life now. Because out here, we are not using the fountain pen. I hope if you ever refuse to give me your ink, I hope you're doing well in life. Anyway, so it was not until the mid-20th century that Laszlo Biro, a Hungarian journalist, and his brother George Biro, an engineer, developed the revolutionary ballpoint pen. So their innovation relied on a tiny rotating ball at the tip of the pen that delivered a controlled flow of ink onto paper. it's interesting to see that this simple gadget, a ballpoint pen, needed an engineer to develop it. So it means there was some sort of physics behind it, and it didn't just come into being as just like that. So the ballpoint pen eliminated the need for its messy predecessors, who are the fountain pens. And this breakthrough forever changed the way people write, with the ballpoint pen becoming a game changer. I think it was also a game changer for me because my skirts were no longer dirty. Yes.
I used one after we talked about this, and it tears the book, or maybe I don't know how to use it.
Which one did you use?
I'll check
The fountain
I'll check.
pen.
I got one, yeah.
Oh,
You went to buy Ivy Formal. You felt
you
No,
felt
I
left
wanted to
out.
experience
Maybe because
because I never got a chance.
because
to
you never used it
experience
before.
so
Yeah,
you
I've
went
never
to a
used it.
bookshop and bought a
Yeah,
fountain
just
pen.
a textbook center.
And I've actually seen.
No, it tore my notebook. I was like, maybe I don't know how to use it.
Yeah, you don't.
You
Gosh,
don't.
really?
And that's why.
It's
no,
the
no,
most
it's true.
flowy.
It's true.
You have to be very gentle.
You have to be very gentle with it because it has a steel nib, and that's some of the problems you used to have writing with fountain pens in school, where sometimes you press it too hard on the paper, then the nib opens up and it doesn't join back up properly. So those were common problems. Sometimes the nib will open up and then it spills too much ink. And you see this ink flows like water, so it very quickly messes your page. Yeah. So it was a common problem that even we had.
Even we felt it.
And I think that was the essence of using a fountain pen, for you to learn how to write smoothly, and to write a good handwriting. If you see, and gently, if you watch, I've only seen it on the internet, calligraphers using the fountain pen, because they're able to use the pen in a way that the nib opens up and closes, and therefore writes differently. On
It's
the
very
paper.
flowy, and they
Very
weren't
flowing, yeah.
tearing
And
the
so
books.
satisfying.
Yeah, I wonder why
To
mine
watch,
was
but
just...
not to do.
Yours was messy.
I think
Yeah.
Ivy, Ali, you just bought that pen to experience.
It's because my big brother never lets me use theirs because they kept saying I'll pour their ink or I'll destroy their pen.
So you healed your inner child when you got it.
Yeah, the trauma is now gone.
But then some years back, working here at the agency, I saw a colleague who had a fountain pen, and it really jazzed me. I will confess, I went and bought one as well. But then I remembered, once I started using it, I found it was the same issues that they used to have.
Yeah.
Nothing really had changed. It still messed my notebook. It was still difficult to use. Still had to buy ink, which was messy. So I reverted back to my biro very fast.
Yeah. So, Susan, that was just how the name Biro came to be, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many different types of pen. We have highlighter, felt pens. So pens have evolved, but before we go back into BIC, I just wanted to mention there are some pens out there that stand out. There are pens that they will forever go down in history as being very important because, as Ngirashu quite rightly informed us, there are some pens that are in the Hall of Fame in the US because they signed certain bills. Is that true?
Yeah, so pens are a big deal. Pens are really a big deal. What I've seen is that in the US, they have special pens, which the president uses to sign a bill. So when a president is signing a monumental bill, not like a finance bill, but when he's signing into force a monumental bill, they will even use several pens to sign their signature. And I guess as a president, you need to have a signature that can run across a page. So I've seen them taking the pens, the various pens that were signed, and then being given out to different people. And one is usually kept in the president's library, memorial library. So they're important and they're interesting like that. I'm not sure in Kenya whether we have that tradition, but I'm sure that the pen that President Kibaki used to sign the new constitution was preserved somewhere.
Oh, yeah. By
Yes,
the way.
so that you can actually go and see it, and it forms the mementos from that time. Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe we should start asking
Yes,
the
yeah.
State House to preserve the pens
To preserve
that
the pens.
the president uses to sign bills.
Yeah, I'm glad you came with that pen because it brings out the personality, the color of pen used. That there are people who would like to use the red pens, blue pens, black pens, and people who never sign documents with certain colors. I remember we had that discussion.
Yeah. I worked somewhere where the editorial administration manager used to sign things in green.
Yeah.
So, and I later found out it was very intentional, so that if you come back later and you have a document that he's supposed to have signed and it's signed in another color, he'll politely tell you that is a forgery.
Forgery.
Yeah, so and I guess that's where you'll find an executive with several pens on their desk, so that whenever they are doing something more important than the other, they can get their special pen for that.
So, as I was saying, the color of the pen you use says a lot about your personality. And also, one of the things that made BIC a pen that many people wanted was because you always end up needing more than one pen and a different color, especially when taking notes. You'd find that your parents would buy you a blue one, a red one, a black one. Black was for heading, or is it red for headings? Oh, Ivy, tell us about the color coding of notes.
Because they made your notes so beautiful. I'm even remembering my social studies notes.
Yeah.
So the red was for the topic, then blue for the subtopic, then now, red was for the topic, black was for the subtopic, and then the blue was now for the notes. And then if it's something important, you can highlight it in black or you underline it in black. Maybe I was just being extra.
No, that was, we also used to do that in the boys' school. And then a teacher marks in red.
Yes, teachers always
If
prefer
you're marked for in blue, it looks weird.
It looks off,
So red was
even now, I
always-
can't sign my kids' homework in red, even if I have a red pen. There. It feels like
it's a preserve of the teacher.
The preserve of the teacher to use a red pen.
Interesting. These are things we are finding out about pens we didn't realize. And just to bring it all back in to the brand that we love. How did the brand we love come to Kenya, Ngirashu? Were you there? Do you remember? Do you remember those days?
Was I there? No, I wasn't.
But you can give us a little bit of a history about.
So some time back, I work at Oxygen. We got some work with Hako Industries, which was a public relations job. And that's when I actually got to know more about BIC, surprising things about BIC. So the BIC factory here is one of 24 around the world. And so sometime in 1978 is when now BIC came to Kenya officially. So they did a partnership with Hako Industries. Hako Industries was owned by the late Chris Kirubi. And so the deal was for Hako Industries to run the factory and the distribution for BIC in Kenya. So they were making the stationery, that's the pens, the shavers, the shavers with the one with the white handle and orange, or is it yellow top? Yeah, and a razor. And the lighters. There's the lighters, the ones for lighting cigarettes. And there's a lighter that's the one
for cooking, the industrial
for gas.
Cooking.
Those ones I've only seen lately. So that partnership was in place for 40 years. And then in 2018, Hako Industries and I think their name is Society BIC, but it's written as SOCIETE.
Society.
Like Society BIC. They formally made the announcement they were transferring the manufacturing facilities and distribution back to BIC. So it was in essence BIC, the French BIC, coming and buying back their operation. So one of the things that they were really emphatic about was that the manufacturing remains here, which means the jobs remain here at the Hako Industries facility at Kasarani. And they will, so nobody was going to lose their job, and they were essentially just transferring the manufacturing facilities and the distribution from Hako to BIC. What Hako had done is they had upscaled the production. There was a small assembly plant based in Mombasa, And by the time now they were taking it back, selling it back to BIC, it was a semi-automated production plant in Kasarani, and then Kasarani, Nairobi, and that was what was distributing now to the rest of the East African region: Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Ethiopia, Tanzania. So it was no coincidence that that BIC was so ubiquitous here, because it was also one of the ways through which Kenya was earning foreign exchange, and Kenya becoming an exporter of pens, of stationery, shavers, and
Lighters.
and lighters to the rest of the region. Yeah, so the Kirubi family, Kirubi, of course, he later died. They received, I think, quite a hefty payment from BIC for that. So the total was eventually 1.6 billion shillings.
Pretty
So
penny.
yeah, it's pretty penny. It struck me as interesting because, you think of the pen, and the big crystal pen is also credited with changing the world, taking literacy around the world. I hadn't imagined that the humble
Pen.
big pen, which boils and you replace it very fast, it used to cost 10 shillings when you were growing up, was something that eventually earned this family 1.6 billion shillings. Yeah, so I found that quite interesting. Of course, BIC remains in Kenya. But even like this pen, the time I knew it was not a big product. It was one of the competition, and I'm happy now to see it's made by BIC. Yeah, so that's the history of the BIC in Kenya.
That also explains why BIC was readily available in every shop. Remember, like in the morning, you forgot you don't have a pen in the morning, you just go to any kiosk and you'd find BIC, because it's being manufactured locally. And probably also why we consider it a Kenyan brand, because it's readily available. They don't have to import it. They just make it here, and then it's in every single shop across the country, which is a very important thing for a brand to do, because it also makes it affordable. Like you said, it was 10. You'd think that 10 shillings, per pen. I mean, how much are you really making? Turns out, I guess the markup is. I think the Hako Industries had figured that out.
One of the things with the big crystal pen, the regular pen, and you realize there are two types. There's the regular, and then there's the sharp pointed one. This one, the one with a yellow casing.
Yeah.
The regular one is the transparent case.
Okay.
And the features on it were also made to make it as simple as possible. A top here, a cover, a hole for breathing.
Yeah.
But it's literally for breathing.
It
That's
is.
how the atmospheric pressure gets in and ensures the ink doesn't spill even when you do this. When you turn it upside down, the top, the cap with the hole, and the top here. I guess the ease of making it and the ease of distributing it. And Hako also got into the business of making stationery with it. Remember the Hako ruler?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it gave them an insight into how rich the market was. And there were also areas of the market that were open, like rulers, typically. Yep.
Even as we discuss big pens, I don't know, have you guys used any other ballpoint pens aside? I know at this rate we might start calling them Biros. That Biro is a brand.
Yeah, they're bio. Yeah.
But have you used any? Because I've realized BIC does have competition in the market. I don't know, have you seen any other pens that have maybe stuck out or caught your attention? Ivy, any other pen you might have used aside from the BIC brand?
Yeah, I remember when Obama won the elections, there were some Obama pens.
Obama line.
Is it Obama line or just Obama?
It was called Obama.
Yeah, I think it was just
A
called
pen
Obama.
called Obama.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's,
Manufactured in Kenya.
I have no idea.
Uh-huh.
It was blue and then it's very shiny. Has like ribbons that's shiny, then it's written Obama.
It looks like candy. I've seen the pen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks like candy, yes. And it's quite nice.
And that's not Speedo
It has the same
cover.
cover like Speedo, but it's called Obama.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but I use Speedo as well and Obama at some point.
Speedo.
But
I don't know.
we always go back
Another
to
brand.
BIC.
Did you use Kilometric? There was Kilometric, a pen. It was used to be advertised by Kipchoge, the other Kipchoge, the older Kipchoge, and Kilometric. So Kilometric, when Kipchoge was advertising it, it was that it lasts as long as Kipchoge. You
Hey.
can go. So kilometric was a pen that
Kilometers.
even the graphic for it was a pen
that was running.
that was running like Kipchoge.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So there was, I don't
Interesting.
know what happened to kilometric. By the time I was growing up, it had either gone out of fashion or gone out of production.
So did you find Speedo?
Yes.
So these are brands that, I don't know, they didn't stick around.
Yeah.
When was the last time we saw a Speedo somewhere?
Oh, I think it died. Then there were...
Any other?
Oh, then there are now fancy pens.
Yeah.
I call them fancy pens. Gel pens
Gel
that I see people
pens.
buying. There's another pen that I use. I didn't carry it here, but it's supposed to be very nice. But I find it very difficult to use.
What kind of pen is that?
So I just carry it around for show. It's called Uniball.
Uniball.
Yeah, it looks fancy, but it can scratch your notebook.
Any pen?
I think all the pens, there's Obama pen, Speedo, BIC, and the pens we get a lot as, what are they called? Freebies. But you'll always find, I don't know which brands they use because they come branded. So they just don't, they don't work. Like you might need to keep on, you've just started using it, but you need to keep shaking it before you start using it. I think BIC really stands out because it's rare for it to stop working. Maybe if it has, the ink has ended.
Yeah.
Or it's boiled.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's boiled. But the fancy brands of the fancy pens, even the gel pens, I think they don't stand the test of time. Like you can use it for a week. If you don't use it like if you use it for maybe Monday to Friday when you're in the office, then you don't use it over the weekend. When you come back on Monday, you might find it's not working.
Oh.
It died.
It
froze.
It died.
Wait, how comes the pens weren't boiling when they were in the bag, but once you put it in your pocket, it boils?
Temperature.
Body heat.
Temperature, I'm guessing.
Oh, okay.
Body.
Yeah.
As we're discussing pens, I just wanted us to just divert a little bit into high-end pens, which Nkirashu had mentioned. There are other brands of pens that command a very large share of the market in terms of pens because of the cost. One pen can cost over $1,000. And some of those brands are like the Cross Pen. Cross Pen is the one which is used by the president in the United States.
Yeah.
And they're usually very executive pens that are rarely found unless you order them. And then we have the Mont Blanc, which is also a German brand. And it's also very popular and expensive. We have Parkers. I remembered we used to have, the ink used to be Parkers, then we used to use for our fountain pens. So Parkers also have very high-end nib and pens that they sell. I don't know if you remember a brand called Pelican.
Yeah.
Pelican was also a very popular brand, but unfortunately, I don't think they were able to penetrate the ballpoint market. They're still in the fountain pen kind of
They're also
space.
in pencils.
And pencils, yes. So Pelicans, I think they decided to just leave the ballpoint to biros and BIC. But these are some of the brands that are still out there that give BIC a run for its money. But again, they are targeting different clientele because these are looking for executive users and audiences. So the target is totally different because for BIC, it's a mass product that focuses on mass production and getting it out there as fast as possible at an affordable price. So as we just discussed the interesting ways that BIC has become a brand in Kenya, do any of you remember people who used to chew their biro tops? Like they completely bite like if you wanted to mark your pen, you chewed the tip, the top. Do any of you remember that?
Yeah, but it reminds me, I had a former colleague who would chew his pens.
Yeah, people chew their
By the
pens.
time, if he took your pen, bye-bye pen, because he'll eat it. When he was nervous, he has a big assignment, he'll chew his pen completely.
So when you have a toothache, it's kind of soothing. I don't
Oh,
normally
okay.
chew it.
Okay.
I don't normally chew it because I don't like using my pen. No, you do. I don't like using a pen without the top.
The top, yeah.
Susan's never have tops, and when he's going for meetings, she takes mine and
Then she chews it.
Yeah, but it's very nice when
Soothing.
it's very soothing when you have a toothache.
Oh,
Yeah, because
I
it's
think we
very
should
chilly.
inform the big company about that.
You start making
Carrots.
mouth guards.
These are some of the unique marketing strategies of BIC. For instance, they noticed that people were chewing on the top of the biros, like the little tip. So they came up with a marketing campaign where they created small little, like you chew it into like a bus or a car. And and it was actually a competition of who would chew their biro top into something creative.
Okay.
Yes, this is
Wow.
actually, these are some of the campaigns that they've identified. BIC has found some very unique ways to reach out to their audiences. Like that was one of them, and it was artistic and a little bit quirky, but it's something that people hadn't noticed, that people often do that when they're nervous or they're just thinking, and it's something that they realized was a way for them to market themselves.
So it wasn't accidental if you saw that thing.
No.
was
They
actually part of
even
the
have an entire gallery just dedicated to that. People who chewed their little
The
tops into
top,
something creative. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and mostly it was in universities and colleges in the US. They actually ran that campaign. It was very interesting. And another thing I've noticed with BIC is that they're very quick to come up on trends. It allows them to identify with their market, which is usually very young people who are in school, maybe in high school, primary school, or even in college, because those are the ones who are using a high volume in terms of pens. So they're quick to get onto trends. I remember, I think, was it a few weeks ago when we had the trend where they had an advert, I think, for high schoolers.
Yeah, after the play.
After the
Echoes
play,
of
the
War.
Butere Girls play. And they quickly said, use pens, not tear gas, something like that.
Yes, or they said the pen is
Mightier
mightier
than
than
tear gas. Yeah. And you see, they are one of those companies that have recognized that despite the fact people need pens, they still also have to market themselves. And like you said, something about education. I don't know if you know that BIC actually runs an art competition in Kenya, and actually the whole continent. Every continent has a big competition where they get artists to draw using the BIC pens. I don't know if you've ever seen people heard of that.
Yeah, I think I've seen something like that. But I've also seen on TikTok artists who promote their work, which is primarily done using big biro pens. And I mostly find BIC somewhere in there. Maybe it's on the stationery, on the writing pads, or the pen that has been used to sketch.
Oh, cool. So according to them, they realize that people like to doodle. Like when you're in the classroom and your mind is wandering and you start just drawing. So they decided to turn that into, again,
Competition.
Yeah, competition. And that is now how they grew into partnerships with artists, encouraging people to use BIC beyond just for academic purposes. They started going into the art scene. And they've been so big in the art scene that they actually have virtual galleries as well as physical galleries in France, where they have art pieces that go for thousands and millions of euros. Made out of BIC. And to date, to encourage young people to still use pens, they run competitions for young children to draw, especially on the walls and on the floors. And because I know there are people who are beaten for drawing on the walls. But yeah, BIC has found very interesting marketing strategies. I don't know if any of you have identified any other. Maybe the price point also helps. The price point also helps in terms of affordability.
I think it's when you look at the BIC crystal, it's just the ease of use, even the shape. They made it into, is it hexagonal, so that the pen doesn't roll easily, so it doesn't fall away and roll away. Even the size of it, the ease with which you hold it. The features that make sure the ink keeps flowing. Yeah, I think just the ease of use just makes it, made it a pen that was very easy to use, and so it's a default option if you're looking for something comfortable to write with. If you want to write fast, take notes fast. It's, you will want something that cooperates.
Yeah.
You don't have to. shake it.
Shake it.
Or wait, ask the teacher to wait as you change ink, or to borrow ink from
Borrow
your,
ink
Yeah.
from those who refuse to
from
give
your
Susan
new
ink.
classmate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything you've noted about the big marketing strategies that you found interesting, Susan?
They sell their pens in, they package sort of, so they already know maybe a student needs 6 pens, so they have the pens already packaged in a box like of 6, and also having the colors, it's not just the blue big pen that works well. The blue, the black, and the red also work. All of them work well. I've heard Ivy talking about how she used to use different colors of pens. I also did, but I think people who liked using the red one for something different, the black one for something different, like just use one pen. Hizi zingine you'll just come and do later.
No.
It says a lot
give you
about your
my notes.
personality.
My
You
notes
like
are
just one
interesting
color,
now.
one block color.
No, I'm saying I can use blue all over. Then maybe after I'll come and underline with red for the headings or something. Especially if notes are being dictated.
Girashi, no?
I think we largely disagree.
Yeah.
Girash and Ivy largely disagree, but I think that was a good marketing strategy for them to have
Yeah.
the different
Colours.
colors all being
In
good.
one pick, yeah.
Yes, so if you want, you'll not like buy the blue pen from BIC from BIC, then you get the red one from another brand.
Yeah.
You'll find if someone has BIC, they have blue, black, and green. Blue, black, and red. I don't know if
They also have
had
green.
Green.
They had
Had
green,
green, yeah.
But if you had a green pen, I think
you were strange.
it told some. Yeah, you are you are strange. Green
What do you
pens are
mean?
strange. Why do you have a green pen?
Okay.
To sign checks.
Wow.
Okay. Anything you found interesting about the marketing of BIC?
I feel like they've said everything, but also I don't think there's anywhere you can go that you will not find big. Because I'm thinking my grandmother has a shop
Okay.
in the middle of nowhere in Maasai Land, and she sells big. So I feel like you can never go anywhere and not find. If you need a pen, you'll find a big pen somewhere.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. So, like I said, and Girish had mentioned, BIC has been very instrumental in literacy programs. So they have a big foundation that focuses on education and donating pens to schools and such. Then they have the galleries where they partner with artists. Like last year, the artist who participated in the BIC Master Art competition took home 177,000 shillings for their piece. It wasn't even that big. It was, I think, about an A5. It wasn't that big. But they have been consistent in finding ways to market themselves. And I feel like it's at this point that maybe we look at it and wonder, is BIC still a brand that we love on a scale of 1 to 10? And if you have, like, when you analyze it from the beginning to where we are now in the conversations we've had, is BIC still a brand that we love? I'll start with you, Ivy, because your experience is...
Yeah, it's the first pen I ever used.
It's the first pen,
So
yeah.
For me, it is a brand that I still love.
How would you rate it from 1 to 10?
I'll do 9/10. The
Oh.
one is because it used to boil and was cut. Yeah, that's the only reason.
Yeah, so it's still a brand we love, yeah?
Yeah, otherwise it's a 10. But I'll give it 9.
Okay, for boiling.
Yeah.
So do you think it's still a brand we love?
Yes, BIC is still a brand I love, and I think a lot of Kenyans still like using BIC because it's still widely used across homes, across offices. So I'll give it an 8.
An 8. That's big. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think I'll give it a 9.
Okay.
Because it's a product that has still remained relevant, not changed. This thing where people want to keep improving, want to keep changing, want to keep modernizing their products, and some do it and then they go overboard and you end up with something that's not as practical as it used to be. I think for staying consistent, even with the price, and for just being easy and good to use, I'll give it a 9.
9.
In fact, I'll probably give it a 10.
It never used to boil.
I think the boiling was a user problem.
User problem, not
Yes,
a
I think
product
it was a user
problem.
problem, not a product problem.
Ivy.
And I think having seen the impressive history it had, and even seeing, even what was done to market it in Kenya and to keep it in production in Kenya, I think it's a strong brand. So probably 9.5. Yeah.
This is the highest
You're
we've
this
ever-
close to giving it a 10 at this stage.
I'm that close. Yeah,
Okay.
but I think it's a strong brand that is still loved.
I think for me, I'd give it a very strong 8 as well. I think it's a brand that Kenyans love. They've consistently continued to go back to BIC, even though there are a lot of other options in the market. Even though we are a digital society, it seems there's still room for the pen. And if there's going to be a pen, I think BIC will probably be one of the names that we mention. And in terms of quality, I feel like BIC is reliable. Like you're almost sure that unless it's a different brand that has, it's usually a reliable pen to use. So I'd give it a solid 8. I don't know. So on that note, I think we'd have to say that we'd have to call it a wrap.
And sign off.
Sign off. Yes, we have to sign off. And on that, and unless there's something else you'd like to add about pens, yes.
I don't know if this will be added.
Yeah.
Someone was talking about, for butter, we talked about the logo. And I just remembered BIC has an interesting logo. It's like a cowboy.
Oh,
It's a boy with a pen.
It's a boy with a
pen with a pen.
Okay, it's like
Like a thing.
it looks like this.
It's a boy with a pen.
It's a student, basically. So it's like the logo, I think, was also part of their marketing. And they've not changed it over
Since
the
the
years.
beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
And the colors, yellow and black, those are their brand
Colors.
Yeah.
They've remained the same.
Yeah.
So I feel like people really like the pens because in this office we have pen thieves.
Pen thieves.
Yeah.
Pen is like Susan.
I will not mention names.
But you say she takes your pen.
I borrow, not
She
take.
borrows.
Oh.
But they
Oh.
can still disappear.
But they
You
never come back.
But pen thieves are everywhere. Pen thieves are everywhere.
And on that note, we come to the end of this episode of Brands We Love, the BIC episode. And next time we shall be discussing Kiwi Shoe Polish. Brands We Love is a podcast produced by Mula Media. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.